Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a really important topic, I think, that has come to the forefront, and that is really how do you manage a borderline family member? And when we talk about sort of personality issues, we're talking about interaction, emotion, and items that are deep seated within an individual that we encounter perhaps on a daily basis, a periodic basis. It can be chronic, meaning this person is a family member, so you're always sort of exposed to them and you can't get some perspective. And so when we talk about managing a borderline personality, let's talk and it can even be in the workplace, but really kind of looking at in the family dynamics. How do you manage? It is something that needs to be managed because someone who has a borderline personality disorder, they tend to have what is known as mood lability. Also, those individuals who are narcissistic or psychopathic, we see a similar distinction or a similar manifestation of mood lability, which means there's an instability of emotion. And it can go from extremes, and meaning extremely happy, extremely in love, extremely joyful, and then to bottoming out, to rage, to anger. And the issue with the borderline is that they tend to hold on to these extremes for some period of time, and they have difficulty letting go of that emotion. They have difficulty with what is known as emotional regulation, meaning it's hard to adjust the temperature. Their emotions will rise up, they'll get triggered, particularly those of the negative variety, meaning they're getting angry, agitated, feeling out of sorts, frantic, chaotic, running around like a chicken with the head cut off. However you want to describe it, there is an intensity of emotion. And this can be very difficult to manage or to deal with. And if you're constantly in a state of cope or trying to manage this intense behavior and intense emotion, once again, energy in motion is an energetic field that you will feel around them. And basically, when you're exposed, you are drawn in. And it's just the nature of the beast. It's the nature of the individual. It's as if, if you're walking through a garden and there's a rose, you can smell the rose. A rose is a rose. You might then go to a prickly cactus. You're not going to smell the cactus. It's spiky, it's thorny, it has a whole different growth system. It has a whole different ecology that it lives off of. So it's kind of like the feeling that you get around them is based on this as of a variety. So we have a variety of people, we have a variety of flowers, a variety of music. And so it's just kind of like the music of their soul, if you will, that is sort of discordant. Things that are disharmonious, that tend to clash. And these individuals will tend to get in clashes with people who are the closest to them, who deep within they feel very connected, their blood, their siblings, their daughters, but yet they can't express it. They have a deep-seated fear of abandonment, meaning they don't have a good sense of self, or sort of a dysregulated sense of self, meaning it will shift. It will shift. And meaning their sense of self or their self-image, their identity can be like a moving target. Sometimes they feel good, professional, a good, cook, or whatever it is, how they feel about themselves, no matter what their industry is. Maybe they're into nursing and they'll say, I'm a great nurse, I covered all my bases, and they will work frantically because they don't want to be abandoned by their job, abandoned by their coworkers, just abandoned by that setting. So they really have sort of a clingy, frantic energy and approach to life. Just like a rose is a rose, a borderline is a borderline. How do people diagnose it, treat it? It's all, we're not here to diagnose or treat. We're here to discuss some different resources and tools that hopefully you can grasp onto and apply. So, and really, it's important to understand the borderline and just to diffuse not only the energy, but also to understand that their intensity is how they are. This is what is forecasted. This is, if you were to turn on the news, we've got tornadoes ahead. We've got tornadoes ahead. It just is what it is. So you can literally forecast. And as I say, it's just kind of like a forecast, especially if you're going to be seeing them. You know what the weather is going to be like. So to come prepared, rather than just coping and managing, it's just kind of like you're just sort of on the skirt tails of being able to feel like yourself. One important aspect to understand is how people usually feel in the presence of this personality. I'm also going to do a flip side video for people who have borderline and present some tools and resources for these folks. If they want to change, they can help to manage and modify their own system, their own temperament. For a successful borderline, they'll tell you, they know themselves, but they know how to manage it. Some borderlines have a great deal of pride about knowing what is going on within themselves and then managing it, knowing when their mood is getting too escalated, noticing when their mood is getting too de-escalated, meaning all the extremes. It's very difficult for them to have a sense of neutrality, just, in the middle, feeling not judging one way or the other. They can be highly, highly judgmental to hold on and cling on to their perspective, which is to keep things intact. And by escalating, they think they're going to get the same results. In other words, if I escalate, this is how I feel. I have some degree of certainty. And it's just like someone who is revving up their engine and then, flooring it. It's just like they are going to get there. They've got their eye on that very sort of narrow focus. And with people who try to interact and talk with them, you kind of feel like, not that you're talking to a brick wall, you're more like trying to, route lava as it's coming from a volcano. It can be very heated, hot, stingy, prickly, uncomfortable, like you've got, things crawling on your skin, seething anger, clenching up the jaw, grinding your teeth, just getting your heart pressure up. And when you're in this state, it's a very reactive, disempowered state. And it's just, once again, it's to understand that when you're around these individuals, it's like playing music. If you put on beautiful classical music, you'll kind of float around. You might listen to the violins. You might listen to, the drums. You might listen to the brass. You'll pick up different elements and you'll hear how they're perfection, musical perfection. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, that just totally took me away. In my mind, I was in the country and I saw a breeze over wildflowers. Music has that power to influence. Borderline's the same way. It's like putting on a music channel and all of a sudden blaring discordant music. You're like this, it's very uncomfortable. It's very difficult to not lash out, jump at the source and try to extinguish it. That is sort of the Achilles heel. Just like when a doctor, hits you with that rubber hammer underneath the knee, and then you've got your reflex, kicking in the air, you can't control it. So it's a very out of control feeling, but yet you have to sort of stick with it, because oftentimes if this is your family member, well, then this is your family member. You have to embrace your bloodline, embracing your family line, embracing all that means, your identity, your ethnicity, your religion, your family tree, your family heirlooms, your family, the blood that is thicker than water. It gives you a sense of identity, normalcy, tracing back, a sense of nostalgia, these things that we want to have and embody in our life. It's very difficult to feel disheartened when you're around this energy because it's so scattered. It can be very scattered and very hard to sort of shape and manage, just like a clay that won't get into a shape. It's just you can try and try and try. It's always going to sort of, be like a can of worms. It's just going to kind of come out. It's just how their energy is. They have a unstable sense of self. They have a lot of uncertainty that oftentimes is, worry, a lot of worrying going on, which for a lot of people, I had a good artist friend out of New York, very accomplished, and hanging in gallery events, and was one of the first artists to make their presence. He was an apprentice to one of the first artists in China to hang in the museum there as the first American to hang their art. Anyway, he made a very profound statement that I'll always remember, and that, he said, worry is one of the most worthless emotions. So, meaning it just doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't add value. And so there's this feeling of sort of lack of value that this person just, it doesn't validate oftentimes and get in sync with relationships and just get-togethers, conversations, etc. So their sort of moving target sense of self is part of the cause of this. So I think it's important that if you have a family member who is borderline, to understand that they're going to have this sort of shiftiness. This is who they are, and it creates an environment of energy around them. And to buffer this, it's important that you are able to understand a tool which I think is very useful, which is that of cognitive reframing. Reframing meaning you're understanding it and interpreting it in your own value-based system, and you're sort of changing the schema or story or label or meaning, that you are experiencing with this. The label, this is my sister, this is my mom, this is this, this is my nurturer, or this person is my adversary, my antagonist, the one who makes my life difficult. There's a lot of labels that people then assign to individuals. This is normal, natural part of life, symbolic, as well. And so it's important that you are able to take a step back in the privacy of this video or in your heart or when you kind of work on these things to realize that this is who they are. They've got roots. They've got this is how their being is going to evolve or become. And to not let it interfere with your own sense of becoming. And to meaning your evolution, your growth, your happiness, your eye on the prize, your joy. It's very difficult that these people sort of leech that from you. Intentional, it's usually not intentional. You have to understand that this is very different than from someone who's psychopathic or narcissistic. They really don't intentionally seek to inflict harm on others, but they do. It's just damaging, the things that they say, the things that they won't take back, the things, they oftentimes don't apologize. I didn't mean to do that. I really didn't, want you to suffer those years. You're not going to hear this sort of emotional, intelligent talk from a borderline. That's just not who they are. Are we looking at a rose or are we looking at a cactus? So in other words, it's to understand that the tool of cognitive reframing is being able to assign a new image, a new label, not judgmental, but as a way of computing within your own heart, mind, and spirit what this is, the flavoring that it gives, the feel that it gives, and so that you can maintain a sense of perspective that isn't caught up in their chaos, their mood lability, their sort of back and forth sense of identity, and just to know that that's a troubled ground. And, to want to help them is usually, part of the issue that gets people so sort of entangled. And so it's difficult to disentangle, especially when they're used to it and they're going to revert back to the same pattern that is very deep cut and deep rooted, meaning it's just like a groove. Like you hear in, vinyl, and they say vinyl is coming back or records are coming back. But as you might know, there's grooves that the needle then picks up and then it plays the music. These people have deep grooves, which means it's hardwired. The wire is insulated within them, and it's oftentimes very resistant to outside influence. It's all within them. So to understand what you are dealing with is to assist you with your expectations and your experience. So if you expect, a cactus to be a rose, it's an adjusting of what it is that you're dealing with and to make a realistic assessment. And the forecasting, which means once you're able to sort of back up a little bit and to say, this is, this person is intense or they're angry, giving them a new sort of caricature, as you will, and not in a judgmental sense, because that can fuel a lot of the unpleasantness that can come. There's a tension, there's a prickly energy. This is who they are. Will it soften up? You can try to tell them, ease up. Don't you see it this way? Oftentimes they just don't. This is, and they'll tell you this is how they have been their whole life. And it drives them crazy as well. But don't let it affect you. The tool of cognitive reframing means that you say, this is the fertilizer for my understanding of personal growth. So calling them sort of a fertilizer, not calling them a fertilizer per se, but giving them a new name. So for example, if they're hypercritical, this is the censor. This is this is the courtroom board. This is the hammer. It's the tool of cognitive reframing helps you to kind of change the story that you're playing in your mind while you're trying to manage and understand them. So, a hammer is going to look for a nail. So giving them a name will help you to make it your own, but help you to get some distance and be in charge of the interpretation and your experience that you're deriving from it, so that you can then manage and accept what it is that you're dealing with. And you might not ever have the closeness that you think that you should have. You might not have the warmth, the hugs, especially with family. We kind of have expectations that we're all coming to the family circle with the intention that this is family and we look out for each other. We take care of each other. In times of sickness, we are there. We take you to the doctor. We hear about how your test went. When are you going to physical therapy? This is involvement with your family. They've been with you and shared experiences that you'll always treasure. You've got the treasure, and then you've got sort of, something who's going to be like a lava spill and then, pour lava into your treasure chest. So it's kind of like there's this feeling of, ruin and wanting to hold them back. But it's very difficult to hold back a lava flow, as you can imagine. So if you then give them it's a reframing, so a name that makes sense to you. You might call them Johnny Appleseed. You might call them Betty Boop. You might call them the Flying Carpet. You might call them the Jack-o'-lantern. Whatever it is, give them sort of, a fun name, if you will, to make it more palatable and to give yourselves a sense of writing and rewriting your own story. There is a narrative that goes along with managing a borderline family member. And of course, there's oftentimes disappointment, depression, disgust, feeling that it's unfair. Why me? This is not right. How can I live? How can I grow with this? How can I even survive? All these life or death questions come to the forefront. You have to face your fears. That's how you dismantle fear is you face it and you realize oftentimes it's not as bad as your mind will conjure it up to be. Back in the day, writing that report, oh my gosh, and then you get to writing and then it's not that bad. Hey, I can do it. In fact, I kind of like this report. Once you face it, you can find that it's not as bad. So, and also, so the cognitive tool of reframing will help it become more manageable for you and then just become part of your repertoire. So you don't always feel that you're just coping, but that you've got a grip on things. You've got a handle. This is, your environment and you're able to set it at bay. And things might get kind of smoky. Things might get foggy. You might not be able to feel that you can see things clearly. I think that's part of the issue, is that oftentimes when they're faced with what feels like a very antagonizing presence, is that it's difficult to think. It's difficult to manage your thought patterns. So it's very difficult not to be reactive or caught up because the tempo and the momentum of their speech is such that you have to sort of mirror back. So you can look at your tone. You can look at how you refer to them, how you reference them. How can you turn down the temperature? How can you turn down the volume? And to maybe stop playing that discordant music, i.e. knowing, how much you can take and in what aspect, and how to politely limit the amount of time that you are exposed to that, so that you can get a sense of time management as well. For example, you can also even set a timer and look at the timer and say, okay, I'm going to observe while this person is around. I know we've got viewers who are asking about, to discuss, what do you do around the holidays? We're going to be talking about that, where maybe you haven't seen this person for 6 months or a year, and then you've got, a problematic, maybe potentially problematic situation, and how do you make it pleasurable? How do you diffuse the tension? So we're going to be talking about that. But, it's just part of the gang. If you have a number of family members, I know we also have people, our viewers who have a number of family members, so they're surrounded, there's kind of like, there's no outlet, there's no validation, there's no support system with you there who can buddy up and be like, OMG, let's just sit over here. So you have to develop a self-validation, working hard on it, a little bit of effortless effort, meaning within, looking at that validation. This is the gang. This is the, the posse. This is the scene, or whatever you want to call it, putting it into perspective like that. And especially if it's very unpleasant, you've got things kind of coming at you from wrong angles. You want to discuss something, they won't discuss it. They're angry at you, and it's just, they just won't let it go. It's, on and on. They just don't let the anger go. They don't let the whatever go. It's just, they will hold on to that. And so you realize that in those moments, you don't have to subject yourself. Bear with me one moment, I have to go to the bathroom. Bear with me one moment, I just, heard a button pop and I have to go sew a button on my jacket. Politely excuse yourself. Don't get, realize, when you've hit that limit. For a lot of people, the limit is already there. They can already feel it. So looking at, as a timer, about, putting a timer on. I know for a lot of people who, are looking for assistance with anger management, not denying those feelings, because they are there, they're present, they're real, but oftentimes they're super raw and they just get bloody all over the place. So you have to stop the bleeding and perhaps set a timer and allow yourself to be ticked off, furious, infuriated for 20 minutes. The timer goes off, okay, got it. And then maybe a couple hours later, you set the timer again. I'm going to be pissed off, furious, agitated, and this is for a release so you can manage your release if you're dealing with a lot of, tension. stress. Life changes will really buckle these people down. They will, because they're afraid of change, that their unstable sense of self is like, I'm not going to have an identity. They literally are so terrified that they are not going to, have a strong sense of self when this happens. They don't let it go. It can last for years, decades. It does not lessen. In fact, it's like they just make it more alive in the present, even though it might have happened years ago. I mean, you think it just happened yesterday. They will hold on, righteous. And it's just like, okay, we got that email wrong. Can we drop it now? And then 3 months later, well, because you didn't get that email, and you're like, this is not a big deal. Why is this such a big deal? They will make the big deal out of things that are seemingly shouldn't be. And the big deals then become an obstacle that shouldn't be a big deal. It's like, and life is too short to have it filled up with obstacles that others create. It is. So are we dealing with the rose? Are we dealing with a cactus? Are we dealing with a carrot? Are we dealing with a tomato? What are we dealing with? So be able to use the tool of cognitive reframing and sort of renaming, meaning giving it another border, giving it another, how are you framing it? Is it a gold curl, frame? Is it a metal frame? Is it iron? Is it wood? What kind of frame can you then put around it? Give it some sort of feel, vibe, and texture. This is a mental practice. Schema management. It's also been used to help borderlines. They need to do this for themselves. They need to do this for themselves. I just thought I heard my book fall. So they need to do this for themselves. And so you are experiencing what they need to do for themselves. So you need to learn for yourself. It's like osmosis, if you will. This is just how it is. So, and realize that their sort of unstable sense of self affects their moods, values, opinions, goals, and relationships. Just about everything. So if you feel like they're in one day, out the other, I love you one day, I hate you the next, it's too much all, and, it's just sort of a chaotic feeling, but yet, there's those good times and we have to make the best of it. So, this is the episode. This is, what they have. This is what it is. Accepting what it is something to kind of, it takes time, because oftentimes there's a lot of hurt and destruction and things that they have done and said and caused that have made it very, very, unforgettable. They've been kind of like milestones. And significantly, when we talk about family are some of the most influential circle of people you will meet and have in your life. They are going to be your big influencers. So you have to look at that dynamic, that circle. And if it's a circle that you are part of, make sure the circle can then be reframed with that feeling that is more palatable for you. And you might need to break the circle. You might need to step back while they're in the middle. If it's a triangle and you're triangulated, you might need to step out of the triangle and just be kind of like the solo, owning your own perspective and not taking the shame or guilt that oftentimes they thrust on others because of this instability and intensity and extremes. They don't have that ability to sort of gently kind of go back, where some people are wonderful. I mean, they just are able to just, they're cool, calm, and collected. They have a very neutral all the time. So you need to expose yourself to some of that. You need to limit your exposure to the clashing music. If it's really discordant, it does not work for you. Admitting that, accepting it, embracing it, and it's okay. So to a degree, I'm gonna wear earplugs. I'm going to put on some earbuds. I'm going to play my music on my phone while they're around. I'm going to, do and busy myself. I'm going to have managed amount of time and eye contact so I can still connect in their very discordant, disconnected way. So kind of what you're dealing with. Rose, cactus, I hope this video makes sense, and I hope you're able to develop some of your own tools for reframing this situation. It's your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. You can reframe it, you can change kind of the story, and you can understand through forecasting what it's going to be like so that you've kind of got a new perspective and picture in your mind so that you're not feeling as a victim, but you're feeling more of a victor and sort of an observer of this, and getting kind of an appreciation of who and what this is so you can understand the impact that it's had on you, and then work it through so that you can become kind of a champion of that situation, and then get kind of what you feel that you're lacking from other relationships, other pursuits, other, disciplines. It really can help to fill you up if you feel that you've been lacking.